Have you ever sat quietly, maybe with a cup of tea in hand, and thought about all the things you wish your children knew, but decided to keep them to yourself? Not because they aren't important, but because you've lived long enough to understand that sometimes silence is the wiser choice. As we grow older, we carry years of memories, disappointments, lessons, and love. It's only natural to want to share those pieces of ourselves, but in trying to connect, we may sometimes say things that, without meaning to, create distance, confusion, or even pain. Respect from our adult children isn't something we demand. It's something we protect through how we speak, how we listen, and just as importantly, through what we choose not to say. This video isn't about suppressing your voice. It's about honoring the legacy you're still writing, one conversation at a time. Today, we'll explore 6 deeply human truths that are often better left unsaid if you want to preserve closeness, dignity, and emotional trust with your children as you age. If this kind of reflection speaks to you, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, where we have honest, thoughtful conversations for older adults navigating this season of life. And if you've ever held something back out of love or wisdom, share your story in the comments below. You're not alone. Your voice matters, even in quiet moments. Let's begin. 1. Don't make them feel guilty for living their own lives. There comes a time in every parent's life when the house grows quieter, the calendar emptier, and the calls less frequent. At first, it may seem like a small thing, an unanswered message, a missed birthday lunch, a holiday that passes without a visit. But little by little, those silences start to feel personal. You begin to wonder, do they even think of me anymore? It's in these moments that the temptation creeps in to say something sharp, something soaked in sorrow masked as honesty. A quiet comment like, "You're always so busy now," or "I guess I'm not a priority anymore," might slip out without intention, but its weight is real. And though you may feel justified, what it does is plant guilt where love should grow. Because guilt doesn't bring people closer, it pushes them away. Your children, even as adults, carry more than they let on. They're navigating careers, raising children, paying bills, making mistakes, and trying to stay afloat. When the calls slow down, it's rarely about love fading. It's about life getting louder. And when you meet that noise with more pressure, even in the gentlest tone, they begin to associate your voice with stress rather than safety. That's not the connection you want to build, not the one that endures. But there's another way, a way that doesn't deny your feelings, but reclaims your power. The next time the silence stretches, instead of leading with hurt, try leading with understanding. Say, "I know life's full for you right now. Just know your voice always brightens my day." What that simple sentence does is shift the energy. It reminds them of the warmth they miss. It doesn't demand, it invites. And when someone feels invited rather than obligated, they return more often, more willingly, and with more of their heart. That's the beauty of emotional boundaries. They don't create distance. They create respect. And from that respect, real closeness can grow. Closeness that's free of resentment, free of expectation, and full of choice. Because the truth is, respected parents are the ones who respect space. They understand that letting go isn't losing someone. It's trusting that the bond is strong enough to stretch without breaking. So when you miss them with love, not guilt. When you long for their voice, let your longing be tender, not tied to shame. In doing so, you offer your children something rare and sacred, emotional freedom. And that freedom often leads them right back to you, not out of duty, but out of desire. They return not because they're told to, but because they want to. And in that choice, respect becomes something unshakable. Letting go with grace is not the absence of care, it's the presence of trust. And that kind of trust speaks louder than any complaint ever could. So the next time your heart aches in the quiet, remember, you don't have to fill the space with guilt to be heard. Sometimes the softest words are the ones that echo the longest. And now that we've touched the ache of distance, let's turn inward, to a pain even deeper, one we often carry for decades without realizing it. The kind that starts not with our children, but with the parents who raised us. 2. Don't blame your parents for how your life turned out. There's a moment in aging when reflection sharpens. You look back and see all the roads you didn't take, All the things that could have been different. If only your father had tried harder. If only your mother had believed in you more. And it's tempting, deeply tempting, to speak that truth aloud, especially to your children. You sit across the table, the air still, and the words rise. I never really got support from my parents. It sounds honest, but what your child hears isn't just your past, it's a forecast. They wonder if one day you'll say the same about them. Whether you realize it or not, your stories shape their emotional security. When you cast blame upward, it can tumble down the family tree. And while it may feel like you're simply naming a wound, what you're also doing is handing that pain forward. Your children begin to carry questions they didn't ask for. Am I doing enough? Will I be spoken of this way someday? That weight is quiet but heavy. You see it in their hesitation, their guilt, and their overcorrection. And none of that brings healing. But you still have power. Power not to rewrite the past, but to frame it with grace. What if, instead of retelling the pain, you said, they weren't perfect, but they tried, and I learned from that? Those words don't erase your truth. They elevate it. They show your children that love can exist alongside imperfection, that understanding is stronger than bitterness. And that lesson, modeled, not preached, is one they'll carry long after you're gone. Forgiveness isn't about pretending nothing happened. It's about choosing not to let it poison what happens next. You don't need to pass down disappointment to leave a legacy. You can pass down strength, emotional resilience, and perspective. Say, I broke the pattern. Say, I tried to do better. Those are the words that nourish generations. Your past might have been hard, even unfair. But when you turn it into wisdom instead of weight, you become the kind of elder whose silence heals more than 1,000 explanations. There's nothing wrong with remembering, but when memory becomes blame, it closes hearts. When it becomes compassion, it opens them. Your children don't need to know every misstep your parents made. What they need is to see the kind of person you became in spite of it, and how you chose not to let resentment define you. Because respect doesn't grow in the shadow of blame. It grows where grace is practiced, and grace is a choice, sometimes a hard one, but always the higher one. You've lived long enough to know that not every truth is a gift when spoken. Some truths are better transformed into quiet strength, into stories that teach, not hurt, into the kind of presence that makes your children feel safe, not scrutinized. So the next time old wounds knock, answer them with perspective, not projection. And if you must speak, let it be with kindness, for your past and for your child's future. Now that we've faced the ghosts of what came before, let's look at another whisper many of us carry: the longing to tell the whole truth about missed dreams, forgotten chances, and the life we never fully got to live. 3. Don't vent your regrets or missed dreams. There's a kind of silence that grows in old age, not because we have nothing to say, but because so much was left unsaid along the way. You may find yourself reflecting in the quiet, remembering the dreams you shelved, the opportunities that passed, the choices that carved paths you now wish had led elsewhere. It's human to want to speak those things aloud, especially to your children. They feel safe, close, like the right place to unburden what you've carried. But what begins as honest reflection can quietly become a transfer of emotional weight. When you say, I should have gone back to school, or if I'd taken that job, maybe life would have turned out better, you're not just sharing a thought, you're letting them feel your unfinished pain. And while they might nod, listen, even offer sympathy, inside they carry something they didn't ask for, a sense that you're still searching, still unsettled, that you look at your life with a sigh, not pride, and worse, they may wonder if they were enough to make that life worthwhile. No child, no matter their age, should feel like they're part of a story their parent wishes had gone another way. Because when we frame our past as failure, we cast a shadow over everything that came from it, including them. But the truth is, a meaningful life isn't one where every dream comes true. It's one where love was given, values were lived, and resilience was built one ordinary day at a time. Instead of handing them the weight of your what-ifs, offer the gift of perspective. You can say, I didn't get to do it all, but I got to raise you. I got to build something steady. That means everything. These words don't erase longing, but they anchor it in gratitude. They remind your children that even in the imperfect, something beautiful was made. And that's what they need to hear. Not a list of lost chances, but the quiet dignity of someone who owns their story with peace. Because they too will have regrets one day. They'll stand where you stand now. And how you carry yours teaches them how to carry theirs. Not with shame, not with constant apology, but with grace. You still have time. Time to feel proud of what you've survived, of how you've loved, of the life you've shaped. You are still becoming, even now. And you don't need to explain what didn't happen to prove that what did was enough. Let your children remember you not as someone who always looked back, but as someone who looked around with wonder, with calm, with purpose. Let them say, "My parent taught me that joy can exist even with unfinished dreams," because that's the kind of legacy that lasts. And just like their childhood memories, messy, imperfect, filled with moments you might not even remember. Some things are best wrapped in grace, not reanalyzed. Now that we've acknowledged the weight of regret, let's explore another tender truth, one tied not to the past, but to the very foundation your children were built upon, the way you speak about the person who raised them beside you. 4. Don't speak ill of their other parent. There are truths you've lived that no one else will ever fully understand. Nights when you felt invisible, sacrifices that went unnoticed, years of feeling like you gave more than you received. And sometimes when your child is sitting across from you, older now, maybe even with a family of their own, that ache rises to the surface. You want to say it aloud. "He never appreciated me," or "I should have left long ago." It feels like claiming your voice after years of silence. But what it does, even when whispered gently, is tear at something foundational inside your child. Because no matter their age, your spouse is still their parent. And when you speak in bitterness, even justified, you force them into an emotional crossfire. Suddenly, they don't know where to stand. Should they defend you? Should they question their other parent? Or worse, should they wonder if they've inherited more than just their smile? The truth is, your marriage is part of their origin story, and when you speak poorly of the person who helped raise them, you don't just critique a partner, you shake their sense of identity. Even if the relationship was full of flaws, the love that brought them into the world deserves dignity. That doesn't mean pretending everything was perfect. It means choosing a language that preserves instead of erodes. You can say, "We had our struggles, but we raised something meaningful together." In that sentence, you acknowledge reality while protecting the bond they carry inside. That is emotional maturity. That earns respect, and it teaches your children, especially if they're now in relationships of their own, that it's possible to honor the past without glorifying it or trashing it. You model emotional detachment, not from truth, but from the need to wound. You remind them that peace is possible even when things were never easy. Because when you speak with grace, you're not just rewriting your history, you're shaping theirs. You give them the freedom to love both parents without guilt, to see the good without ignoring the pain, to know that they came from something human, not broken. That's a powerful form of healing, and one they will carry into how they raise their own children, how they speak of you when you're not in the room, and how they choose to forgive in their own lives. Words have memory. What you say now will echo in their quiet moments later. So choose the echo wisely. Choose the one that sounds like strength, not bitterness. The one that says, "We weren't perfect, but we tried." The one that says, "You come from love, even if that love changed shape." Because more than anything, our children want to feel whole. And that wholeness depends on the stories we choose to tell, and the ones we choose to release with silence. And as we hold that space for their emotional safety, we must also be careful not to chip away at something equally fragile, the way they see themselves in relation to their siblings. Let's turn now to the words we use when comparison creeps in, often without us even noticing. 5. Don't compare your children to one another. It often starts with a passing remark, one you may not even remember saying. Something like, "Your brother always checks in on me," or "Your sister never forgets my birthday." To you, it might sound like casual reflection, even affection. But to the child hearing it, those words don't land softly. They land like quiet judgments. Small reminders that they're falling short in ways they didn't know they were being measured. And the damage is rarely loud. It's subtle, slow, and cumulative. They begin to question whether your love must be earned through consistency, attentiveness, or success, rather than given freely, simply because they are yours. Over time, the comparisons become a wall, separating siblings who once played side by side. One may grow tired of trying, the other pressured to maintain the gold standard they didn't ask for. And what you hoped would nudge them closer often leaves them more distant from you and from each other. Every child is born into a different version of you. The one who raised your eldest isn't the same person who raised your youngest. Time changes us, softens us, sometimes hardens us too. So when you compare, you're not just contrasting two people. You're overlooking the unique story that shaped each one. And yet, it's human. When you see one child thriving while another drifts, it's natural to wonder why. But turning that wonder into spoken comparisons invites shame, not reflection. Instead, speak to their individual light. Say, I know your days are full, but I love the way you check in when it matters most. Or, you've always had such a gentle way of showing you care. I see that, even if it's not often. These words do more than praise, they heal. They say, I see you, not who I wish you were, not who your sibling is, you. And in that recognition, something powerful happens. Your child begins to rise, not out of competition, but out of quiet confidence. They show up more, not because they feel guilty, but because they feel safe. And that's when real connection forms, rooted in respect, not resentment. This doesn't mean ignoring bad behavior or pretending all is equal when it isn't. It means correcting without comparison, loving without measuring, and guiding without labeling. Because the moment you pit your children against each other, even unintentionally, you plant seeds that may never fully disappear. And as you grow older, what matters most is not which child did more, but how deeply they feel they belong. Each of them carries your voice in their head. Make sure it's one that builds them up when they falter. Make sure it reminds them of their worth, just as they are. And when you do that, when you speak with that kind of emotional clarity, you'll see how quickly relationships begin to mend, how easily love returns when it's not wrapped in comparison. And as we reflect on the quiet damage our words can cause, we must also pay attention to what we share about ourselves, especially in the most vulnerable area of all, our health. Because while honesty matters, too much detail can become its own kind of burden. Let's look now at the delicate balance between keeping loved ones informed and overwhelming them with the weight of our every ache. 6. Don't overshare every health complaint. As we age, our bodies speak louder. A dull ache here, a sharp twinge there. Suddenly, mornings require more effort, and nights are restless in ways they never used to be. It's natural to want to talk about it. After all, these changes aren't small. They affect how we move, how we sleep, and how we feel in our own skin. And when your children call or visit, they often feel like the safest people to share those worries with. But there's a fine line between honesty and overload. When every conversation becomes a detailed rundown of symptoms, treatments, test results, and what-ifs, something begins to shift, not in your body but in theirs. They start to feel helpless, anxious, even guilty. They love you, and because they love you, they absorb your pain. Not physically, but emotionally. And when that pain becomes the dominant language you speak, they no longer hear your voice. They hear worry, despair, and the echo of things they can't fix. It's not that you should hide serious concerns. Your children deserve to be informed when your health affects plans, care, or decisions. But not every sleepless night, every sore knee, every flutter of fear needs to be passed on. Sometimes it's not the sharing that brings closeness, but the restraint. When you say, I've got a few aches, but I'm working with my doctor, you offer them something priceless, peace of mind. You show that you're aware, you're responsible, and most importantly, you're still in control. That quiet assurance means more than you know. It allows your children to love you without being consumed by you. It protects the relationship from turning into one of constant worry. It lets your presence feel light, not fragile. and that is a gift. Because dignity in aging isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about choosing what you share with purpose, with care, with emotional maturity. There's strength in not making every conversation about what hurts. It leaves room for joy, for memories, for updates about the world, about them. When you balance truth with protection, you give your children something they didn't even know they needed. The freedom to enjoy you, not just worry about you. And in that freedom, their love deepens. Not out of obligation, but out of comfort. Not because they're trying to fix you, but because they feel safe with you. That's how emotional respect is built. Not through constant exposure to pain, but through intentional moments of honesty wrapped in grace. And when the time does come, when something truly matters and must be shared, they'll be ready. Not worn out, not numb, but fully present. Because they'll know that when you speak, it's worth listening to. So ask yourself before you share, is this something they need to carry or something I just need to acknowledge? Sometimes the better gift is not what you say, but what you spare them from. Let your strength be quiet. Let your dignity lead. Let your presence speak of resilience, even when your body doesn't always cooperate. That's the kind of legacy that lingers. And now that we've talked about how we protect their peace, let's step back and reflect on the deeper reason behind it all. Not just to avoid burden, but to become the kind of parent they can admire, trust, and return to freely, fully, and without fear. In the end, the most powerful legacy we leave behind isn't built from grand gestures or perfect choices. It's shaped in the way we speak, what we choose to reveal, and just as importantly, what we choose to hold back. As you grow older, your voice still carries deep influence. It can lift your children or quietly weigh them down. These 6 emotional boundaries are not about hiding who you are. They are about emotional maturity, quiet strength, and the dignity of aging with grace. When you choose not to blame, not to compare, not to guilt or overshare, you're doing more than protecting your children. You're preserving respect, emotional connection, and peace. So let your presence be a calm force. Let your silence be thoughtful. Let your words affirm who your children are, not who they're not. If today's message spoke to something inside you, take a moment to reflect. Then share your story in the comments, because someone out there might need to hear your wisdom too. And if you found value in this conversation, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more grounded reminders that your voice, your growth, and your emotional clarity still matter, especially now. Your presence still has the power to shape generations. Use it wisely.